What's your absolute favorite headcanon that you've written? Let us know in the comments below. Somewhere in the astral sea, there's a building that houses all the pocket dimensions created by bags of holding, portable holes, and the like. The reason they explode into the astral sea is because you are trying to force 2 points of that one building together, so they reject them both to prevent a potential breach into other vaults. For my elves, they can live virtually forever in a state of active stasis. They can work and live in harmony with other elves without aging at the cost of being sort of dazed all the time, like living on autopilot. But when other races get involved, the elves physically can't enter that state. So adventuring elves are literally being aged by their companions' dumb antics. My halflings are always the 3.5 edition Fantasy Roma itinerant travelers. Gives them a hat that no other D&D race can wear. I often present their trade caravans as the lifeblood of kingdoms and continents, providing constant supplies and information across national and geographic borders. It's also a neat way to bridge most editions' descriptions of the race being torn between being homebodies and wanting to adventure, by bringing their homes on the road with them. The minions of chromatic dragons see themselves as part of a liberation movement that prioritizes physical size, the ability to fly, expectoration of themed breaths as the chief, justifiably admirable virtues of those in government, a necessary corrective to modern decadence and corruption. The way elves age is due to mental maturity and their mental health. Using this headcanon, I wrote an elf who, due to the trauma of losing his family, has stayed a child both mentally and physically for 1,000 years. He only gained the body of a teenager when the players began helping him overcome his trauma. I also had an elf who kept the body of a young man for thousands of years, until he lost his wife. Within days, he devolved into the body of an old man. Tiefling is a double recessive gene. Tieflings crop up in apparently human families when someone pulls a double recessive genome from forgotten ancestors. The child of a tiefling couple is always a tiefling. The variants are a pack of genes unrelated to being a tiefling. They reflect natural human diversity. Half-elf is a dominant gene, though it is possible for a half-elf couple to have a human child. Some half-elf children of half-elf parents are genetically elves, but social pressure prevents recognition. Half-orc is an interplay of several genes, most of which are naturally recessive. The presence of all of these genes results in a half-orc. Half-orc couples can have half-orc children, but there's a slight chance of a human child. Thrices, the child of a half-orc and an orc, just results in a decrease in human child probability. Embryos with elf and orc genes result in an expression error that produces a malfunctioning hemoglobin molecule. This allele combination has 100% lethality. Halflings are human variants, but offspring seldom have correctly sized organs, resulting in 100% fatality. Dwarves have 2 extra chromosomes compared to humans, despite sharing over 99% of their genome. No mitosis can succeed. Dragonborn are part of the Dino-Avis clade called Draco-Avis in Faerun. Dragons and theropods share a common ancestor in the late Jurassic. Dragons and Dragonborn do not share a common ancestor, but branched off from theropods in the early Jurassic. Breath weapons are a case of convergent evolution. This guy brought biology to the table, and I'm loving it. Pathfinder gnomes are always my gnomes of choice. Gnomes are fae that need to stay interested in life, or else they lose their color and vibrancy and are 99.9% likely to die because of it. So, they will pick something, a goal of some kind, likely stupid to us, and pursue it to completion for as long as it's interesting. My wife, who had undiagnosed ADHD for 25 years, chose for her gnome druid to embody hyperfixation through the desire to taste anything that looked interesting to her. She licked weapons, structures, slimes, captured foes, ancient technology, whatever, for a whole 1 to 20 Pathfinder campaign. And that is gnomes in my mind forever. Pathfinder druids eventually gained poison immunity, which was helpful. Lightfoot halflings have French accents. They love their food and drink. They're farmers, cheesemakers, peaceful in general, but do not mess with them. Foreign Legion tendency to protest. They have les petits déjeuners, les deuxièmes petits déjeuners, les onzes, les déjeuners, les après-déjeuners, les dîners, les petits déjeuners de la nuit. All these English bumpkin types are fine and everything, they're stouts, but how about Jean-Pierre Fromagier and Vivian Pomme-de-Terre? I hope I did all of that semi-correctly. I've tried French and French-Canadian, guys. Don't judge me. When a significantly large group of one race and species gathers with a common goal, thought, or ideal, they create a localized phenomenon. This phenomenon, is dependent on the race or species. Orc. Fervor. The group's emotional status is unified and intensified. Anger turns into rage. Sadness turns into deep sorrow. Something like a Warhammer Orcs roar. Dwarf. Tempo. Each dwarf's natural rhythm slowly moves in sync with the group, leading to increased work efficiency, or, under a great leader, leading to high discipline. Elf. Flow. The group collectively enters a flow state, adapting to any changes within seconds. Whether performing a free-flowing symphony or raining arrows on a foe, their momentum never falters. Elves view crime as a symptom of mental illness that needs to be treated, not punished. Their prisons resemble Earth rehab centers, complete with group therapy sessions. That's how I started my current campaign. Each player described the crime that put them in prison and what part of their backstory led them there. Elves were originally spirits of change, akin to Corellian Larenthian, manifesting as a racial ADHD. They hyper-focus on a single discipline for decades, then switch to something else. That's why you'll see an elf as a level 1 fighter, but they're also a level 20 wizard who's sick of magic and needs something new. I used to work at a correctional facility in the US, and a few times helped arrange special haircuts for Native American indigenous inmates who wanted to cut their hair as part of their traditional grieving process after losing someone close to them. I watched and sometimes cried with them as they had part of their heritage and spirituality cut away from them, just as their loved one was taken from life and from them through death. So, in my homebrew world, dwarves cut their beards when they lose someone close to them. And when they and their brethren are about to go to battle, they either cut their beards for one another or have their partner do it for them. They grieve with one another for the loss of each other, their loved ones, or themselves, knowing they soon may face death. They grieve for their partners, their clan, their futures, but also do so together before the loss happens in a ritualistic way. The dwarves take great pride in their beards in most fantasy settings, just as indigenous people take pride and have deep spiritual connections with their hair that I can't begin to fully understand, but from which I'm drawing inspiration and gravity, hopefully in a respectful way. So, when you see a dwarf with their beard shorn short, they've either just been through a heavy battle, or they've lost someone close and are grieving. Or both. It's a grave situation, not to be teased at, made fun of, or prodded. I also really like how you respect the indigenous tribes and their rituals and spirituality, while also giving the dwarves a hell of a new flavor. Orcs are known as raiders because they're a nomadic people who often take years between settling in places, seeding orchards and allowing time for fish and animal stocks to recover. Sorry for the story below, didn't expect to write so much, but we love it here. Imagine, then, if your people were relying on the pine nuts and fish stocks of a region, giving it 10 years to recover so it could feed your people, only to return and find that humans have settled in, claiming to have owned the land for 7 years. Worse still, you find that the burial stones marking your ancestors' graves have been desecrated and smashed, turned to cobblestone for a shit-covered street. The humans meet you at the edge of the forest, a full mile in from its former stretch. The pine orchards, gently seeded by elders long gone, are now gone. You find weapons in the woods, discarded heirlooms of entire family lines. The humans speak to you, boasting about how they beat back another band, a small group that travels in synchronous harmony with yours. The humans boast about their victory over the savage raiders and threaten to do the same to you. These humans, trespassers on a land that your people have tended since the ancient gods first painted the night sky with their glowing tears of joy. They boast about slaughtering your kin, your paired clan. Many a son or daughter joined that clan. For generations, the two clans circled like mated eagles, only deviating from their path to aid each other in times of war or crisis. You tended the same land with them, left markers of new orchards or promising fishing spots. Now these humans speak of settlement and ownership. They talk of 7 long years of struggling to extract a living from the land. Extract. A word used by people who hunker in one place like rocks, leeching the land, killing it, draining it, until they need to expand and find new lands to conquer, new lands to destroy. They dance on the bodies of your kin and talk of their labors, destroying in 7 years what has taken your people centuries to cultivate. They threaten you, claiming you must depart from their lands. They sneer and glare at the small group of fish scouts, elders, and garden tenders you've brought to parley. They raise crossbows at you, weapons made from the hearts of trees that took generations to grow. You leave the humans behind, shoulders slumped, soul weeping. The joyful tears of the gods are obscured by smoke as the humans burn the last remnants of the pine orchard planted by departed elders. You smell their cooking, even hear the scents of animals and plants roasting to fill the bellies of thieves and destroyers. You think of what you will tell your people. How can you? Their kin slaughtered, their ancestral lands despoiled, the fish of the river all but exterminated, and the orchards burned. Where will you go? This valley was to feed your people for 3 to 5 seasons, a wealth of plenty. Families planned the birthing of children around the nourishment of this place. Where will you go? Will you go on to the next place on your cyclical journey, even though the wild berries are not in season and the deer are young? What if that place is destroyed too? Will you risk fleeing to the lands of another great journey of orcs, potentially breaking a peace that has stood for generations out of your own cowardice and failure? So, you return to your people, camped out in a mountain pass, retrieving the axes and spears they had stashed here for chopping wood and catching fish. One of the young fish scouts had run ahead while you walked. They beat you here and are speaking before your people, all of whom are picking up axes and spears. They speak of thievery, of destruction, and the humans taking the valley's plenty for themselves. They speak of storehouses, granaries, steel weapons, and tools. They speak of what has been taken and what is owed. Your people stand in the mountain pass and look down upon the fires of the humans in the valley. Their hands grip axes and spears as the cook fires light the night, and the tears of the gods are obscured beneath clouds as a storm enters the valley. Your people are hungry, and they are hungry. Let the humans learn what happens to thieves and to spoilers. Let them learn what it means to look upon a field they have planted and see it burned. Let them gaze upon the corpses of their kin, slaughtered for rabbit, fish, pine, nuts, and soil. Your people gaze down at the valley, stomachs grumbling, axes and spears in hand, and the stars, the tears upon the eyes of the gods, pass out of view as lightning strikes. And your people begin to march. Halflings grow really good tomatoes, or some other fruit vegetable of choice. The wood elves are very upset at the halflings, as they consider themselves masters of the agricultural domain, but they just can't grow tomatoes as well as the halflings. Oh, and the halflings, they just give a ton of tomatoes away to whoever passes by, as if growing tomatoes that good was nothing special to them. If you want a tense scene with a bunch of elves on the verge of losing all self-control, watch when the halflings send a group of children to deliver a few bushels of tomatoes to the elves. The elves never throw away the tomatoes because, well, they are too delicious. But eating the delicious food just makes the elves mad, because they can't grow it themselves. Imagine seeing an elf with a furious scowl on his pristine features angrily chowing down on a bowl of spaghetti with tomato sauce, periodically moaning in enjoyment at the rich flavors, and then just getting even angrier and scowling harder. The halflings are genuinely unaware of the animosity and consider the elves to be good neighbors, unlike those filthy, disgusting humans. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid, your favorite narrator and voice actor from Ohio. Making sure to tell you to leave a like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you get notified whenever we post a brand new video, or in case something else magical happens here too. And of course, let us know in the comments below what's your absolutely favorite headcanon that you've ever written, and if you ever want to help us with our headcanons, make sure to join our membership program. You get early access to videos, and you help us keep the lights on too. We love you all. Please be safe, happy, and healthy. See you next time. Toodaloo.